So my question for Pankaj, excellent talk. I was thinking about your earlier comment that you made about different countries making varying amount of investment. So how do you view in terms of the global disparity in terms of AI development and access in different economies? As an investor, what are some of the opportunities that you see and also risks that are associated with your investments in a global sort of a landscape?
What's your name?
Venki.
Venki. Venki, it's a good thing that people are spending time, money, resources around the world because the context is different. So may 1,000 flowers bloom. Number two, to the extent that a lot of duplicate R&D is happening, it's not efficient. On the other hand, to the extent US cannot slow down because China will get ahead, etc., bringing new focus. Right? From an investment perspective, you have to be careful. NVIDIA, everybody's using NVIDIA. There are rumblings that Huawei and others in China are going to bring out their own GPU. Hardware is global. Language models are not. Middleware is not. And applications are not. If you go up the stack, mileage will vary. I primarily invest in US and India. So, my exposure is limited from a global perspective, but something you cannot ignore. Okay. So Kai is here. We'll go to the regularly scheduled program.
Yeah, sorry, guys. So I would like to ask, first of all, really thank you for you guys to be here and giving very different perspective on AI. So I would like to ask each of us, what would be the main message that you wanted to say today to the audience? You had your presentation and so on, but I think if now we have that in serial way, it can be interesting to see what are these main point. Maybe I can start with you, Stefano.
My point is that also from
This one is on? Yes. All right. We somehow related to the fragmentation, but from a different point of view. I think there is a lot of fragmentation of knowledge, especially between like computer scientists and like natural scientists, which is more where I come from. There are so many things in computer science that have been discovered independently in a bunch of fields, and I think it's still very relevant to try to look at what cognitive scientists are saying about how people reason, for example, and what psychologists know about learning and decision making and so on. Not only because it can inspire techniques in AI, like reinforcement learning, which has allowed renaissance of AI, with starting with like DeepMind or AlphaZero and so on. I think like first reinforcement learning paper is from like 1981, and the author Rich Sutton, who's now like a big shot, was a double major in psychology and computer science. That's why he thought like, oh, the pigeon doesn't do supervised learning. The pigeon just like knows what it feels good and what it feels bad. So the signal that the pigeon has is much more limited than what we're trying to mimic in artificial systems. Like, how do we learn based on a limited signal of that kind? That kind of sparked the journey toward reinforcement learning. And I think there are still like untapped sources of knowledge in psychology and cognitive science that could go in that direction, but also provide concrete like models of, depending on your field, patients, consumers, people who look at advertisement. There is a whole field of like consumer psychology blended with AI that I think it's largely to be explored, for example.
Thank you. Okay.
So I think my simple takeaway is AI is happening. Healthcare has the biggest opportunity to disrupt, to transform. And multiple investment opportunities. The next $1 trillion company, $10 trillion company, will likely come from AI and healthcare. I have a debate with my friends, AI and healthcare or AI and energy. I'm on the healthcare side. But even if I'm wrong, that's a second. So yeah, I live at that intersection. That's my takeaway.
So I would have a couple things. I hope at the end of the day, we're all discerning optimists. And, I would ask all of you to try all the new things that are out there, but also understand their limitations. And I think that gives you a very good foundation to start imagining what tomorrow can be and how we can get there. And as we intersect that with respect to healthcare, I think there's a huge opportunity and there's a huge need. If we think about how many physicians there are per unit person, it's actually going down. So the demand is increasing, supply is going down, and question mark in the middle. And towards your point, I would also say that solving that challenge and understanding how we go from bench to bed, or however you want to phrase it, or putting the opportunities of data to work to get us more personalized medicine and better health so that people can live the lives that they want to, I think is actually possible. It's actually feasible. There is a pathway there. Now, is it obvious? Is it easy? Is it whatever? No. But it is possible. And I think that's the takeaway that I would have is, even given all the constraints, even given the highly, say, non-uniform or heterogeneous access to AI, I think we're going to find it applied around the world in ways just like electricity, just like power. It's going to be something where it really enables all of us to live those better lives. So that'll be the takeaway.
So those who was there for my presentation, you understand that I make a big difference between data and knowledge, between pattern recognition and reasoning, between what we call intelligence and what is the AI/machine learning, which is mainly machine learning today, is doing. Please have that in mind, because whatever revolution we're talking today, right? Data-driven and so on. This is just the first step. Imagine reasoning AI at scale. So it's not like in 100 years from now, a thinking node, we have the engine, but not at that scale, and we solve the digital cell model. I think it's important to understand the different type of AI based on what you are looking for. The intelligence in the term of AI today is not really uh, really expanded. And as Stefano was talking about, right, the animal and the human. I want you to keep that from today, that AI is not just data driven. The future of AI is knowledge driven, because we as human, we need much less power to process knowledge. We do not process data. Now, it doesn't mean that we cannot have an intelligence which has nothing to do with human. Yeah, and this is what we're building today. So I have that in mind, because it's matter on what you can expect from the system and where we can go from today. Yes.
And inspired by the animal intelligence.
So, kind of going off of that, inspired by the animal intelligence, I think of things like salmon swimming upstream to spawn, or reptiles burying their eggs at different levels to have more males or females in a certain year. Those aren't necessarily pattern recognized behaviors or even reasoning, but they're a form of intelligence that obviously works because it results in the propagation of their species for another year. So it's something like intuition or instinct or something like that. How do we develop AI that can kind of have this hidden intelligence, I suppose, within our models, I guess?
So I would like to answer, and you will be more precise, I'm sure, Stefano. First of all, we have to be agree on what we mean by intelligence. So I started by, giving the quote of Jean Piaget, right? It's not what you know, it's what you do when you don't know. So, but you can decide another definition. But when you see a salmon going upstream and so on, they always do that. It's not new. So I would not call that intelligence. I would call that related to pattern recognitions and what they used to do. Now, sometimes people talk about intuition, this kind of stuff. For me, intuition is intuition is simply reason. Intuition is just about reasoning, but it's not conscious. So what I mean is, when, for example, we develop, we call that the RefNet, reference network, for our system. The system, I mean, the propagation goes on really billions of combination. It's probably what we do, but we are aware only on some of these point of propagation, because if we have to be aware on each step of our reasoning, we go crazy. So the intuition is, I think, my perspective is, we reach certain conclusion, but the intermediate step was not conscious.
No, and I want to had this debate at Lumiata quite a bit. There's the difference between forward thinking and reasoning and rationalizing something. And this is a lot of truth. Like, if you ask me, why did you think that? Why did you come to that conclusion? It's only then people start thinking, well, let me rationalize that. How did I come to that? And I think that's an important thing, where we talk about these deep nets. We can talk about how they work. You can go whatever, whatever the elephant node or whatever random node there was, that was where that was. But I think there's an issue of, is there a way to rationalize what was the outcome of a very complex system in something in the ways that we would understand, versus actually a reasoning. I started with these premises and I walked forward, and I think It's going to be very interesting seeing the interplay between the two as sort of AI architecture sort of evolve.
A quick question on what's IPable in AI companies. We get that question all the time, and when you're making a decision, how important is IP, or is there anything that you can IP with AI?
I think this is super important question for company, and yeah, based on the type of AI, and to make it very simple, data driven or knowledge driven, it has different consequences. Your moat in the machine learning company is no more the technology, right? You can have buffer share the algorithm, so it's mainly about the data. When you are about reasoning and knowledge, first, the distributed reasoning is an IP itself, but the model we generate, so we use that as a generative distributed reasoning AI instead of generative using machine learning, having text, image, or video, we generate reasoning model. This model, based on our legal advisor, he's no more there, it's possible to think about pattern, for example, the digital cell themselves. So all these different model that are generated can possibly be patented and how to use them.
I'll add to that. Maybe take a slightly different cut. If I take the stack view,
I will
hardware, silicon, lot of IP. Large language models, lot of IP. Which data you're using? Everybody's suing OpenAI right now. XAI advantages, they have data from X. So if you're pursuing data, you're not supposed to go to middleware, things like security, things like analytics platform, and there is potential. Those businesses can be IP based. When I go to the last layer, like applied AI, that's where IP becomes a challenge. And Sammy and I, we have worked on a few deals. There, it's maybe time to market, maybe how you make it difficult for the other guy to enter because you have such a lead. So that's where IP is maybe not placed to rely on. Depending on how you think about AI, there's a lot of IP.
Well, I would posit 2 points. One is, towards your point, the architecture or the means, that is true, that is IPable. My counterpoint to this is how fast the industry is actually going. If you IP'd what you did last year, it's already obsolete. So why did you do it? The question is, how is it actually going to provide you a defense? And I think when we think about AI, we have to think about that, right? Like now, how you may combine AI with interaction, with design, with something else, that becomes something a lot more interesting, because it's not about the architecture, it's not about whatever, there's something more to it. So that frame that you've constructed that may be different, that's something that's going to last longer, right? So I would think about not only what could you IP, but what should you have IP for. It's going to have some long-term value. If you're doing something from hey, great, I have this IP, and 2 days later someone comes out with something that makes it no use, no value. I wouldn't use that as a metric I would be very thoughtful about that, of using that as a metric for investment.
Can we get a question real quick from our virtual attendees? So the question is, what are the current big questions in healthcare / drug discovery and development and AI development that are being asked or should be asked? For example, like, can AI reduce drug development cost, or are there bigger questions?
So yeah, so our company is in completely in this field. So you know the numbers, right? 10 years, 4% success. It costs 2 billion, blah blah blah. And you have to understand what are the causes, why so much failure. So then you have to go from the beginning. The targets, are the target good target? Because it has been discovered, but is it discovered in a macrophage, in a T cell, in a B cell, and so on? It's so you must be able, using AI, to do simulation to have a better answer to this question. Is it a good target for this type of cell, and so on? And then you go to, before you start any preclinical and so on, which is expensive, how you decide to go there? Well, the scientists will tell you, you know what, I think that if we knock that down, we should have this result, let's try it. Again, here, if you have a simulation, and it doesn't make it shorter, it just avoid you to make more errors. Then for the clinical trial, as you know, it's very important to select the right patients. So here again, AI can help to do that.
So I would sort of take a slightly different angle, which was, I think AI can help in a lot of ways people are doing things today. I think some more interesting questions that may be asked is, how can AI help us ask different questions? From issues of what are other ways to view, this is towards your point of hallucinations or unintended creativity or otherwise, but coming to the point of, we still don't know a lot of how everything works. We don't have clear pathways of from A to Z, how all this works and how all the mechanics works and the rest. And so can it help us theorize different things looking at the data? So and therefore opens up new ways to look at things and new ways to do things. So I think that would be an interesting way to leverage AI in the field of specifically drug discovery and otherwise.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think that's about time for our panel. And next we have Reza for a few final remarks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.